Bit of a shock, actually. No. So roll call, please.
Director Clark.
Present.
Director Penrose.
Present.
Director Dye.
Here.
Director Decker.
Here.
Director Radbach.
Here.
He's actually alternate for Director Roddick. And Chair Slater Carter.
Present. Okay, moving right along.
Okay, due to unavoidable circumstances, we will not be able to have the special order of the day. 2A, adopting resolution, we would like to push it to the next meeting.
Well, good. We can work on how we're going to embarrass George even more.
No more time.
Public comment, oral comment, and this is for items not on the agenda. And there's a whole long paragraph about being in person or via computer or web link or telephone or sending emails. So that said, can you see any questions in the audience? I do not see any on that screen. These are done. They're touching. Do we have any public comment from people on the board? Seeing none, we're making great speed. We could be out of here by 7:30 if we're quick. Let's move on to consent agenda. There are 4 items. Minutes for March 27, disbursements for April 20 up to April 24, revenue and expenses report through March 31, 2023, and status of the CIP projects.
I'd like to pull item C, if that is ever.
Okay, and I would like to pull item D.
I wasn't going to pull it. I just wanted to make a comment or a question about item A.
Oh. Well, so do we have a motion to approve on consent item D?
So.
Thank you. Second. Motion from Harvey and second from Peter. And item B for the audience is approved disbursements for April 24. Now we can sign the checks. Thank you very much. Roll call vote, please.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Penrose.
Aye.
Director Dye.
Aye.
Director Radbach.
Yes.
Director Decker.
Yes.
Chair Slater Carter.
Yes. Okay. Who wanted to comment on item A?
I did.
You did.
The minutes reflect that the board consensus was unanimous to this is about the testing of wastewater for high-risk substances. Board consensus was unanimous to discontinue the blah blah and find funding for the program from other sources. As I recall, we pretty much specified that the county can pay for it, and that efforts would be made to get that to happen.
Or the sheriff's office, I think.
Yeah, typically.
I thought we discussed county as well as sheriff's office or any other sources, so we just didn't want to categorize it specifically. That's
I
why we said.
recall that there were a number of different suggestions made, but it primarily revolved around the county.
We should maybe suggest that funding should be found rather than find, because it makes it sound like we're going to find the other funding. So as long as we're rewriting it, maybe change it to say that funding be found elsewhere.
I think that's just a great way to put it. If the county comes up with it, that would be nice.
We could also put in a request that the county come up with it.
That makes sense.
It's helpful.
Yeah.
We already put a request to the county.
Great. So we don't have to add that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so with that minor change, we will put that one over to be approved with the others. Barbara, monthly review and expense report.
Okay. I don't always look at these. Sorry, I didn't, but I started just taking a look at this, and I was really shocked by the unfavorable variances on many items. If you looked at page 34, for hourly employees, the unfavorable variance for year to date is $25,000. For BOD wages, it's $14,000. For holiday pay, it's 68,000. For overtime, it's 22,000. One of my questions on this is, obviously, this is all due to the storms and so forth. Is some of this going to be covered by insurance, or is that only going to cover the physical damage? And I'll come back to this, but my concern is that these costs don't seem to be reflected in the document that we got tonight regarding the budget.
Well, there's good news.
Okay, but
And I'll just break in. I was invited because MWSD did the paperwork for Sam to get FEMA reimbursement for the flooding. And they are including labor, all kinds of labor in what they're asking for as documentation. So I can't guarantee it because, of course, the representatives were wonderfully nice,
yeah,
delightful, but you know how they are behind the scenes, not them, but their auditors or whoever they are. But they indicated that we could get most of the million sum back. And as you know,
and
I
insurance
don't,
will cover some too.
and insurance will cover some. So that shows it honestly, and then we'll be making it up later.
Okay, but fine, that's great news, and I'm happy to hear it. It's just, I also feel like when we talk about the budget, I can look at this more, but a lot of these, there are line items on the agenda for projected costs for this year. And does that assume that none of these negative costs, it doesn't seem to work together. And I guess I'm hoping that we will have a budget workshop or something before we try to finalize the budget, because I find this really confusing. And I don't want to vote for millions of dollars in budget until I understand it. So let me just go on. Gas and electricity and solid waste are 21 and 20,000 over budget already. Chemicals are 90,000. I don't think these are costs that will necessarily be covered by FEMA. The treatment plant is 41,000 over. The line item for pipes is my favorite. Pipes, $405,000 over budget. Princeton Pump Station, 22,000. Portola Pump Station, 43,000. Machinery and equipment, $1,800,209 over budget. And judgment, 80,000. Well, I know what that is. That's the fine for the BOD problem, I think, right?
Yeah, if I could answer each one of your questions. I did receive your email a little late, 3:30, so I did
Yeah, I'm
not
sorry.
reply back to you,
Yeah.
but I could clarify each one of them. For the first item where you said that there's no budget for holiday pay, so it is 68,000 over budget. Holiday pay is not overtime. Holiday pay is for holidays like President's Day or Martin Luther King Day, so we don't have to, it's not like budget. Most likely in the last year budget, we would have lumped it with wages or premium pay or something. We account for those, the number of holidays which are 12 or 14 or whatever it is. So that's the holiday pay, specifically what you had indicated. Okay.
Well, wasn't there also an agreement that we would allow some of the employees to cash in their holiday by keeping them working at the time that it was needed, and then later on cashing in those days?
I just
Maybe
feel
this
like
is a result of it.
should be an explanation for this, these big numbers. And I'm looking at the budget that's proposed for next year, and it's showing that we're projected to be under budget for this year in wages, and I just don't understand that.
Okay, that's precisely why last year we brought it up more than once to the committee, to the finance committee, that we'd like to have a workshop. In fact, we prepared all the
I'm
PowerPoint
all for a
slides,
workshop.
everything, we organized for it, and then it was pushed for different reasons. So we are prepared, we would definitely welcome, and we can do a workshop for giving different explanations of each notations on the budget so that people can understand.
I would like to be able to attend that, even though I'm not on the finance committee.
Yes, it was proposed to do it for the entire board.
Great.
a workshop.
Because just when we get to the budget for tonight, I just feel as if I look at the numbers here and I look at the numbers here.
Okay,
And I understand that some may be paid for by insurance and FEMA, but somehow that should be incorporated into the reports that we get. So I don't usually look at the monthly budget by line item, but I looked at it tonight and I'm like, wait, what is this? I do not understand. So let's do the budget workshop and
Yeah.
all understand where we are and why we're proposing the numbers that we are in the budget.
right. And you also brought up the question about why the gas and electricity rates were so high. Yes, what we do is, this is over a period of time. So some months it goes up, some months it comes down. So what you're saying is, particularly probably last month, it would have gone up slightly. That's why it's high. So the gas and electricity charges have gone up slightly. And the 405,000 purchase of pipes, that is for the force main at Valimar, which we replaced. So that's part payment. I think it's 90% of the cost. So that was what was invoiced, the 405,000. So that is for the Bay Pacific Pipelines, the contractor.
Right.
And you asked what happened at the Princeton pump station that costed $22,000. That was the VFD failure, which occurred in October 2022. So the VFDs were replaced at Princeton pump station, and that was the cost of it. And what happened at the Portola pump station that cost $43,000? That was the generator repair, which occurred at Portola pump station. We had problems with the generator. So 4A, which was the company which services generators, we had called them and they had done the repair. Plus, we also had a capital project which was done in the Portola pump station where we replaced pumps with the ground force pump. The old pumps got replaced, and that was cost for it. And the machinery equipment variance of 1.8 million. Now, machinery equipment, the category what is there, which we put it generally in the GL and all that, also includes the CIP projects. So at the end of the year, all these things go into infrastructure and then it comes down. But in a monthly thing, we always take it up as a GL under 6121. So if you break it down, the machinery equipment, you do have a lot of equipment which have been procured for the treatment plant also.
But why isn't that in the budget then?
It is in the budget.
But then why is it a unfavorable variance when it's
because
a variance from budget?
Yeah, because it's combined now with infrastructure. Once it gets pulled out, then it comes down. At the end of the year is when all the items which are more than $5,000 get capitalized and then get pulled out from there and then go to a separate capital item.
But still, the line item here is budget versus activity. And we've spent 1.8 million in that line item. And that doesn't matter because
that
it's
is
late
because-
at the end of the year, it's gonna go away.
Yeah, that's because every month when we project, not every month, every quarter when you see Q1, Q2, Q3, we categorize it and show it to you that so much is getting capitalized and we go to infrastructure. So this is just a monthly report that we do.
It's very confusing, and we have the same problem at MWSD. Some of the amounts that we spend, for instance, on engineering, are put in the category of CIP. So then we lose sight of how much the actual expenditure was because it goes into CIP, and then all of a sudden, from $100,000, the expense for engineering becomes only $20,000. And then when we project it out, and then we say, oh, the engineering next year should be 20,000. That's not at all supported by the checks that we're writing out. The other item that is here really confusing at SAM is that we have divided the total expense into 4 departments. These departments or these categories have certain expenditures, and in these categories, it is shown how much we're over budget and how much we're under budget. To give an example, we are over budget in the administrative department. We are under budget by $60,000. Oh, surprise. When I look at the treatment plant, the $60,000 reappear, and there is $60,000 over the budget because the category was shifted from the one to the other for whatever reason. So what I'm suggesting is that maybe we should look into narrowing down the number of categories to the ones that we really need, like the processing and the rest, so that we have only 2 categories, which makes the way way easier for our bookkeepers, because in that case, they don't take an amount in and then have to divide it into 4 different departments, which kind of quadruples their work.
Well, I just feel it's also that I'm not an accountant and I don't pretend to be. But I look at this and you know, I think part of our job is to understand this and understand what's going on, and I find that difficult. So I'm very excited about having a budget workshop where I can understand this better, because when I see a variance of $1.8 million, it makes me nervous.
Yeah, we'll organize for a workshop very soon.
Great.
Well, and my suggestion, as usual, I love footnotes that explain these things, because somebody else who doesn't attend that workshop is going to be reading this and going, oh my God, those people don't know what they're doing. They're throwing money down the soup. And no, we're not.
I never thought that.
Our crew would find it. But I do believe that footnotes where there are big differences or differences that were caused by extraordinary circumstances might be very good for people looking at this a year or 2 or 10 years down the road. It's if we just change it, they're going to think we were trying to hide something, and we're really not. And I also think it's very important for the history of SAM to show how much we have been doing and what extraordinary circumstances we were under earlier in the year. So my suggestion is just footnotes either on the same sheet or a sheet of footnotes at the end of the report or whatever. So we will schedule that workshop. I'm looking forward to it too. And I asked to have the CIP projects for 21-22 and 22-23 removed from the consent agenda, just to highlight for folks how much work Sam has been doing. There's some things that are in the negative category, but a whole lot of things are 100% done, like 7 out of 27.
21-22 is really getting done.
And yeah, and it's important for people, again, to realize that a lot of this delay is from the supply chain, from permitting, and lots of other delays that are not due to SAM crew or management. And so I just wanted the public to know Sam is making good progress in keeping this plant in good shape. And so thank you.
Yeah, to elaborate.
Yeah, go ahead.
To elaborate further, there's a lot of activity going on in the plant. Some of you have walked on the plant. The influent pumps are getting replaced. We're replacing the 5 influent pumps. So we've already started working on the 3 of them, and then we're going to do the 2 of them in the next 2 weeks. So that's going on. Then the bar screens have arrived. The bar screens will be the next project. We've already finalized the contractor for that. The bar screens will be replaced. Then we've got effluent pumps, which will get replaced. Then we've got the digester pumps, the mixing pumps. So all these activities, because of the supply chain issues, we did not get these equipments last year. We've all started getting it this year, and we are in the process of installing all these things.
I have another question here. Oh, please. On this one, on the 21-22, I agree. Congratulations. So much is getting done. It's really great to see. On the bar screen, the budget was $216,000, and they actually ended up costing, it looks like $590,000. Does POs issued include the 2 previous columns on this chart? So is the total spent on bar screens 5.9? No, it can't be.
No.
It includes that with the brown top, the POs issued includes all the costs. So the soft costs are not additional to the number in
The POs issued are for the equipment suppliers. The equipment supplier.
But okay, there's 4 columns: soft costs, hard costs, POs issued, and remaining project budget. Does the POs issued total include the previous 2 columns? It must.
No, it does not, because for the soft costs, we don't issue POs. we issue POs for the hard costs.
So should we have another column for total
Total,
that would be soft costs plus hard costs plus POs issued? Wouldn't that give us a better picture of what was being spent?
but if we tell you the remaining project budget, I thought that was more important, would it be confusing?
I don't think it would be confusing.
So do you want the remaining project budget then?
Yes.
This chart is getting overwhelmed with so many numbers and all that.
Too many numbers.
It's getting down to about a 9.1.
Well, you can move this line over, there's,
Some of us need larger font.
yeah, okay, but I don't think that's a reason to leave out the total cost. But in order to figure out how much we're spending in this project, somebody has to go in and add 3 columns together. Does that make sense? Anyway, I want to ask about the bar screen. So it looks like it's $374,000 over budget, and totally understandable. You don't know how much things are going to cost when you do your best to put a budget number in there. This is not a criticism. But my question is, then how are you going to reduce another, how do you handle that? How do you reduce another project so that your total spending for the year is not over the amount that you've been paid? What is your theory on that? Or just keep going and?
Yeah, we'd be lucky or unlucky, I would say, because if all the equipments had come in the same year and we had installed in the same year, then we would have definitely fallen short of cash. Because of this so-called supply chain management issues or whatever, equipment comes in a particular year, install comes in the next year. So we have some cash which is still left over in one particular year, which we can use for some excess quantities like these. But at the same time, if it goes to a level where we cannot manage, then we bring it back to the board for mid-year budget adjustment. So far, we've been able to control our finances and not go for a mid-year budget adjustment.
So you're using money that was approved by the board for something else to do this project?
Yeah, something else in some other project.
Okay, I mean, this is a great, I'm really impressed at all the great things you're doing. That just seems weird. Anyway, okay, moving on.
I have a question.
Yes.
Speaking of how much things cost, I am under the impression that in January, 850 lineal feet of pipeline was replaced at Valamar. Is that $400,000 worth of pipe
450 or 456,000.
for 850 lineal feet? Wow, I had no idea it was that expensive.
Is it also the installation costs?
Yeah, complete.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Labor.
Don't forget that in that case, there were 2 installations. There was a temporary pipe and then there was a permanent pipe.
Yeah.
The temporary pipe was put in by Andreni because it was so urgent. And then the final one was put in by Pacific.
450,000 was for the permanent pipe and that was for Bay Pacific.
Oh, okay, I thought it does just say pipes, and I thought that was just the cost of the pipe.
It is the installation cost plus, I think it comes around 500 plus thousand per linear feet. That's what it works out.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
Yeah.
Thank you, A, C, and D.
I think Jeremy has a
Oh,
question.
Jeremy.
Yeah, I just had a comment regarding the questions that Director Dye was talking about, where you have line items that maybe don't get approved in 1 year. I mean, what the board could do as part of the budget is you could include a total amount for capital, right? And authorize moving money around in accordance with, what's actually executable and what's not. And that way you don't have to, stop and have a mid-year budget revision. And so there's ways those kind of issues can be addressed as part of just adding some flexibility into the budget language. So I was just going to raise that issue.
I actually really think that's for us to do, so that rather than just using some other money, we give Kitchen as part of the process some flexibility and some parameters as to how to move things around.
Yeah, which is pretty normal. That's not unusual to have that. So anyway, thanks.
Do we have a second on approving A, C, and D?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Harvey. We have a motion by Dr. Penrose and a second by Harvey. Roll call vote.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Dye,
Yes.
Director Radback,
Yes.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Chair Slater Carter.
Yes. Now, and before we move into regular business, I'm wondering if the board would like to discuss item A and then take a 10-minute break if anybody has any specific questions for our attorney Jeremy before we move into item B, and we could move into closed session for 10 minutes.
I don't see any reason for a break.
Okay. For a closed session with Jeremy.
Closed session. No.
I'm okay.
Everyone's okay. Okay, let's move right along then. Regular business has 2 items. Discuss proposed contract collection services budget for fiscal year 23-24 and authorize the general manager to submit it to the member agencies for approval. And I have a request for you, Ethan. Could you, at the beginning of this, and item B is to discuss the proposed general budget for 23-24 and authorize the general manager to submit it to the member agencies for approval. Would you please, for the public, discuss, give a brief definition of the difference between the contract collection services budget and the proposed general budget?
Yeah. Item 5A, which is the contract collection services budget, is a contract between SAM and the member agencies. So SAM has a contract with Half Moon Bay, with GCSD, and with Montara Water and Sanitary District. And this is primarily for number one, for the line cleaning and for the maintenance of the lift stations, which are owned by the member agencies. So we have 13 lift stations serviced for Montara Water and Sanitary District. We have 3 for Half Moon Bay, and we have 1 for GCSD. These are the lift stations which SAM takes care of. And this is purely on a contract basis. And every year we get the contract renewed by the City of Half Moon Bay. At one point of time, they'd gone on for a bid, and from then onwards, it got separated out from the JPA. So every year we go out for renewal. While in the case of Montara and GCSD, it is automatically, we don't have to reach out to these member agencies for contract renewal. And the general budget primarily addresses the operations part of it. It consists of the treatment, the environmental compliance, which is basically lab associated costs, laboratory associated costs, and the infrastructure. So these are the 3 main categories of the general budget, which is basically the operations. And the general budget is assessed based on the flows by each of the member agencies. So in the past year, the flows are calculated for the past year. For example, Half Moon Bay had contributed about 62% of the flow for the entire year. So their portion of the general budget would be 62% of the general budget. And so on and so forth. If Montara has done 30, then it will be 30%, and the rest will be GCSD. So that will be the way it is assessed. The general budget is assessed primarily based on the flows from the member agencies. While the collection system it was agreed upon by the managers and by SAM that based on the linear footage of the pipes which are cleaned at these 3 agencies and the lift stations which are managed, a certain amount of percentage was arrived at, and that is a fixed percentage every year. And that is already included. I believe it's 34% for Half Moon Bay, 28% for GCSD, and 38% for Montara. Montara is primarily higher because I've already explained to you that there are far more number of lift stations that we manage compared to the rest of them.
Thank you. Let's go right into the contract collection services budget.
I think contract folks do a great job, and I think this is a very good use of our funds. And it's great to have these local people who really know the systems to compare them. So appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
I agree.
That's the truth. So, and so for the budget.
Yeah, so since these are two separate line items, should we go ahead and
Please.
approve the 5K if you have no questions on the collection, then we can go ahead and,
Let's do a little bit for the audience about, at least the fiscal impact and how much it is. They can always see the details on the agenda online, but, again, I think it's important to, tell folks particularly what the numbers are.
yeah. So the total cost to provide to the member agencies, requested services is about $809,592. But based on the audited results of last year, we found that $33,639 was remaining. So after discussion with the member agency managers, we decided to put that into this year's budget. And this is only on the audited financial year statements. So we found that $33,639 was remaining. So we deducted it from $809,592. And then the total cost is about $775,953. That is what is proposed for the collection, where there is an overall increase in fees of about $61,733. Other than that, we do not have significant changes to the budget. Our increase of personnel expenses by about $90,000. This is based on the MOU. We have 3% increase on the COLA every year. And then we have set aside repairs and maintenance of about $50,000 just in case something comes up. So these are the highlights of the collection budget. Any other questions? Staff is here to answer.
Okay, do we have any questions from the board?
None.
Seeing none. Do we have questions from the audience? Seeing none, please make a motion.
Okay, I move that we accept a recommendation by staff.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Penrose, second by Barbara Dye from GCSD. Thank you very much. Roll call vote, please.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Penrose?
Aye.
Director Dye?
Aye.
Director Radbeck?
Yes.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Chair Slater-Carter?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item B, discuss the proposed general budget for fiscal year 23-24 and authorize the general manager to submit it to the member agencies for approval.
Yeah, so this is the general budget. As indicated earlier, it has got three different sections. You have administrative services, which is primarily the office staff. Then you have the treatment, which has got the operations. And then you have environmental compliance. Sorry, 4 parts. Environmental compliance, which is basically the laboratory associated costs, and the infrastructure, which is the capital improvement plan. The highlights of the budget is there is no staff increase. We retain the same amount of staff. Our total number of staff is 17, including the general manager, who is on a contract. All applicable merit step increases have been taken for this budget as per the MOU, which was signed with Local 39. All authorized positions are funded. There are a total of 13 positions for the general budget. Like I told you, there's a total of 17, but 4 are in the collections part of it, which we've already discussed. So 17 minus 4 is a 13, which form a part of this general budget. So 6 employees are scheduled for a step increase, and 6 employees are currently at top step. And once they reach step 5, then there's no increase every year, other than the COLA increase, which is as per the MOU of 3%. All services, supplies, and utilities have been increased by a 3% CPI based on our experience of the past budget. And so the overall increase from the adopted budget for 22-23 to the proposed budget for 23-24 is about 10%. That comes to about 874,401. And this is primarily due to an increase in the infrastructure. That is infrastructure budget, which is the CIP. And to talk about a little more, we had the capital improvement plan of about $3 million in the last fiscal year of 22-23. And the 23-24, we have budgeted about $3.5 million. And that is primarily for one particular project, which is for the rehabilitation of the SAMS Montara Force Main. Although the entire rehabilitation will not be completed in 1 year, we propose to do it in the next 3 to 5 years. But we would like to set aside $3.5 million for the preliminary design, finalization of design, doing the environmental, and starting the bidding process for the construction, which we hope that we will be able to do it in 23-24.
How much do you think that will cost?
We have had an engineer's estimate. It's just, I would say, around $10 million.
No, for the first three things.
For the first,
What the things you want to do in the year ahead?
yeah, I do not have an accurate cost, but because just last month we awarded the job to SRT Consultants, the board awarded the job to SRT Consultants. So they would come back with a more accurate figure probably in July, August, and then they are working out various options because it all depends upon what the board chooses the alignment to be. If the alignment is going to be different from the consultant is going to come up with several options. If the board decides on a route which is in kind, then replacing it in kind, then obviously it will be low. But if it decides something different, the size could changes or whatever, then the costs are going to go up. So it'll be difficult to assess the complete cost as of now.
But the costs for the year ahead are going to be for design, environmental review, and bid. How much is that going to cost?
I do not have an accurate number as of now.
Can we come up with an accurate number for that or a closer number?
I can, once we know what design we're going to pursue.
So you're saying the cost of the design. I'm saying the cost of the design, the cost of the environmental review, and the cost of the putting the bid package together.
Ethan, are you saying you will forward that to the districts before we decide on those budgets and this is a placeholder?
Yes, we can work on that and get more details of how much it would cost. Right now, I do not have that information. I only have the information that the preliminary design cost is costing us $180,000, for which the board approved last budget. And they had indicated the design itself as $350,000, which got cut to $180,000, which was without the environmental. So it would be close to $1 million is my guess, the environmental and putting the big package. Because it all depends on what environmental we choose. If we go for neck deck, if we go for complete CEQA, then it's going to be much more. That's why it would not be an accurate cost for us to indicate without knowing what design we're going to pursue.
Are you saying that the 3.5 million that's in the budget now is a not to exceed?
Yes, it is a not to exceed for this fiscal year.
Yeah.
For the fiscal year 23-24.
Thank you.
And we envisage that we will be able to cover the preliminary design, the design of the force main, and the environmental costs, and possibly also put together a big package, possibly within that framework.
And you have no idea how much that will cost.
I wouldn't like to.
And it's not possible to figure it out.
It is possible to figure out, but I don't think it would be accurate because we have not finalized the design. We would probably be able to get into a better estimating once we have options for the design and once we know what the board wants to pursue.
But we won't know that until this work is done.
Come again? We would not know
The
until.
design work. We're going to pay for the design work.
Yes, we would not know until that stage is reached.
Until those discussions take place.
Right, but what we need to pay for in the year ahead is the design, the environmental review, and the bid pack, right?
Correct. And part of the construction, if we can.
Part of what I see this number for is transparency. Because we have to have numbers for this to go forward to the boards and to make a decision. And if it's a not to exceed, that's a greater level of comfort for me than bad number that we have to come back and add money to if it runs more than we thought. And in looking at the expense report, we can see that things change quickly. And so I am recommending, and MWSD recommend moving this budget to the member agencies and accepting the 3.5 is a not to exceed, that we will know more later, but it won't be higher than 3.5 million. And so we can do our planning. If it comes in at $1.5 million, we're going to be happy. And if it doesn't, and it won't come in at 4 or 5 million, my concern is the longer we wait, the higher prices get. And then we're looking at it going up. And we've seen that just with so many different things on the expense report. I have a great deal of confidence in our general manager and in our design team. If we wait and wait, we've got other problems hanging over our shoulders, which we will discuss in closed session. And so, like I said, Montera's point of view is to approve the budget as proposed.
I'm not comfortable at all approving $3.5 million for something that might cost $1.5 million or $2 million more than that. That's just it's too fuzzy or too loose for me to say, well, this could cost this much, but it could cost more than twice as much.
Well, but I was using not to exceed. So
Right.
when I mentioned 4, it's like off the table.
Yeah, but $3.5 million is more than twice as much as $1.5 million.
That's true.
So I would sure like to see some more specificity on what's going to cost what and how long it's going to.
I think that our major concern here should be, and we can define that later on in the closed session, that we are making progress on that pipe replacement. And to nickel and dime at this point means there's going to be delays. And delays are something that we can't afford to have. We must proceed with this pipe replacement, force main replacement, and we must make sure that we have enough time to do that. And that is something that in detail we will discuss in the closed session.
Well, one person's nickel and dime may be another person's $2 million.
Off the top of my head, we have approved $188,000 so far.
Right.
The proposal was for $388,000. So you can tell the difference of $200,000 is what needs to come next in order to complete the preparatory work for the pipe to be replaced. Then the other part of the budget would be the pipe itself. If we listen to a $500 per linear feet, and we multiply that times 13,400 feet, then we have 6.7 million coming up. So $3.5 million is just a little nibble on the 6.5 or more million dollars that we need to spend. And we need to make sure that we spend it now, because if we don't spend it now, then we are falling behind with the pipe replacement, on which there are conditions. And these conditions are important to know, and that's why I suggest we hold off until we have the closed session.
I agree that Sam has to get moving on this.
Yeah.
But I'll repeat, I'm really uncomfortable with such wide variances in what.
What I'm saying is that there is more than enough. There is more than enough of an indication cost-wise that we're going to spend more than $3.5 million.
Not necessarily in the year ahead.
No, that's true. But in order to make a beginning, knowing that the project will take 3 years, we need to have the money. And that money that we needed is at least half of the total if we manage to do it faster than the 3 years.
Yeah, I don't have an objection to it being stated as not to exceed 3.5 million. I agree. I don't think we need to break it down at this point. I think we need to go ahead with it. I'd like also to make a motion to authorize the general manager to submit the budget to the agencies on the condition that the Montara and Granada stipulate to allowing the city to pay under protest for the Montara force main replacement.
I'll second that.
Well, that's interesting for public comment. Montara has direction from the board, from our board, and our basic procedures like with Granada are that we follow the direction of the board here. So we, as you know, we decided that the payment or the conditional approval, we're not going to agree to.
Well, then the city cannot support the budget given that it includes a $3.5 million infrastructure item funding the Montara force main replacement. The agencies currently do not have agreement on how to fund this IPS project in light of pending litigation. However, in the interest of Sam and our partners, we are willing to move forward with the stipulation. So if you're holding us on the stipulation, you're holding it back. And I'm sorry you have to do that.
We have an advice by our attorney in regards to the ERF lawsuit that we
As
talked about in closed session, that we should not agree to such a stipulation.
And our attorneys
Simply
say the
because-
opposite.
Okay,
And I'd like to hear from Granada.
let's hear it from the attorneys.
Our attorney has said that you either approve the budget or you don't approve the budget. Sam operates under a JPA. There's no provision in the JPA for paying under protest. So it's pretty much meaningless. Either Half Moon Bay agrees to pay it or they don't agree to pay it.
Yeah.
And so, we start throwing stipulations in willy-nilly ourselves, but it doesn't fit into the JPA structure.
This is
And I'm
not a willy-nilly stipulation. This is a stipulation. I'm talking. I am talking.
And that's why I was asking for you to not interrupt.
I did not interrupt Matthew.
And you can go.
Matthew had finished.
I hadn't heard that, but
Well,
please finish your
Keep your
comment.
ears open. My comment is that the city has had this stipulation on all IPS projects. We are in a litigation situation right now. You know that, we know that. Nobody likes it. But the litigation has not been decided. And the city will not agree to spending 3.5 million, 8.5 million, 1 million, 20 million on something that is an infrastructure project that is in litigation at this point.
I
It is
think
in litigation and you can say whatever you want, but that's it. We will not support it without the stipulation, period.
Are you done,
I'm done.
Peter?
Sam, of which you are a part, has agreed to sign a stipulation, an agreement with ERF when they were sued by ERF for that exactly force main. Sam has signed that agreement with ERF. You are part of Sam. You consequently have already agreed to be paying for the force main. There is no doubt about that in that particular agreement. That is a different agreement from the disagreement that is being handled in court right now, about which you are talking. I'm talking about the agreement that Sam has signed with the ERF, of which you are a part.
I'm sorry, I've already stated what our position is, and I'm not backing down from it.
Well, I
So
think that's,
you can do whatever you want to do, but I will vote no on any other motion other than one which allows for the stipulation that we will pay right now our share of the 3.5 million infrastructure project with the stipulation that if things are decided in court that say that we do not have to pay it, that we will be paid back. It's that straightforward and it's simple.
well, I will note before I recognize Jeremy that the lawsuit had a decision made. It's a decision that's standing that Half Moon Bay didn't like, but in fact, the judge ruled and wrote a very convincing and important statement that the contract stands. Yeah, but as Peter said, that's not the contract with the ERF, which is a federal lawsuit and which leaves Montera and Granada, as well as Half Moon Bay, responsible for fines and continuation if this isn't done. And Montera, in discussion, we had decided that if this was drug out too long by Half Moon Bay, we weren't going to pay the additional costs. We want to get this pipeline done. We want to get it done as efficiently and economically as probable. And so this is leading to some unforeseen and unbudgeted costs. Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I can understand the positions of both sides. I would just say this: the JPA doesn't have anything about paying under protest. The JPA doesn't have anything about stipulations regarding voting. The JPA doesn't have anything that requires a member to not say I'm voting under protest, right? So a vote under protest of yes is a yes vote, right? So it's just, if Half Moon Bay says, I vote yes, but I do so under protest, I think this stinks, that's still a yes vote. However, if Half Moon Bay wants the other member agencies to stipulate to a particular legal point, well, that's a little bit different, right? So I think that's the cleanest way of probably getting through this, because it seems like your different attorneys have different views, and here I am offering a third view that maybe nobody will like, is the way to get past this is if Half Moon Bay wants to vote yes under protest, well, it's just, they can vote yes and sing the Star Spangled Banner, right? They can do those things, right? I mean, it's still a yes. But if they vote no, I just be cognizant of Section 5C of the JPA agreement that probably takes you down a path that you don't want to go to. So anyway, that's what I have to say, and hopefully it's helpful.
Thank you. Greg, I see your hand has been up for a while. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, I am not going to comment on the matter that you just have in dispute. I had raised my hand back when the point was raised about whether the allocation in the budget was more than it should have been. And I wanted to offer a couple of perspectives. Some of you are aware that I've done some analysis going back to, I think the numbers were middle of 2021, which did anticipate significant capital expenditures that weren't currently forecast. I forecasted the reserves of all the agencies were deficient in that regard. What happened in this storm is just one example of the kind of things that could happen. And I bring that up because I can see that there's a rationale for exceeding the tangible immediate cost that is known. I appreciate GCSD's point, one person's 2 bits is another person's $2 million. That's a valid point there. But this bears on how you inform your ratepayers and what you set as a basis for adjusting your rates. If you don't have an expenditure of, let's call it $3.5 million in, then I don't know what you tell your ratepayers when you go to adjust the rates to cover the anticipated expenditures of future years, which are coming. And, I don't know whether that's $10 million or what the bill is. But I could see that there's a tactical advantage to having an amount in the budget, which is provisional and which will only be spent upon further detailed evidence, because then that smooths for your ratepayers the shock of seeing that these multi-million-dollar expenditures that, as again, were obvious to me years ago, are now coming due. So that would be my argument for having the number that I think GCSD uses inflated. I view it merely as a amortized or smooth anticipation of a multi-year project. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments from the audience? I don't see any more hands. Let's bring it back to the board. Barbara.
I just have a concern, just by like a budget workshop, about expenditures last year over budget that are somehow then just go away. I feel as if we need to figure out a way to make sure that they're incorporated into this year's budget. And if we have to pay more because some of the costs were higher. And that's why I'm interested in having a budget workshop to look at the numbers and some of the issues. And this has happened year after year. There was the DOD that caused a whole bunch of problems. This past year, there was the storm. Some of it may get paid back, some may not. I don't see that we're incorporating that, and it's a lot of money in our proposed budget. As for the problems with the infrastructure budget and the costs of the IPS repair, our attorneys more or less said what Jeremy said. So we don't want to sign on to a stipulation. I would be happy to support, if all these other problems are solved, a line item that's more than sufficient to cover the cost that we expect, with the understanding that we would be expected to pay more the following year. I just don't understand, like, just to be on the safe side, we have to park millions of dollars more here at SAM. We're capable of planning ahead. So if they're only going to spend, say, $2 million in the year ahead, why do we have to pay $3.5 million? Why don't we just keep that other $1.5 million until it's needed, and it would be in the next year's budget? And by then, we will have a much better expectation of what the pipeline would cost. I realize everything I'm saying is kind of moot because I don't think we have an agreement on the stipulation issue, but that was the comment that I'd like to make.
Do we have any more comments? I will say thank you, Jeremy. I think if Half Moon Bay wants to pay under protest, they don't need our permission. And so I'm going to ask for a motion to.
We already have a motion on the floor.
We do. And could you repeat that, please?
Yes, Half Moon Bay, and find the wording.
Would you like me to read it, Devin?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, we are going to move to authorize the general manager to submit budget to the agencies on the condition that the Montara and Granada stipulate to allowing the city to pay under protest for the Montara force main replacement.
Okay, do we have a second?
It was seconded already by Harvey. He's rereading the motion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We've had a lot of discussions since then. I wanted to make sure we were clear.
Yep.
Okay, would you please call the question? Would you please take a roll call vote?
But before you do that, because we don't want to, I would say that, is there perhaps, well, I'm concerned that you don't want to get in a situation where you're voting against the general budget. So perhaps you could do a substitute motion.
Would you like a substitute motion?
No, we
Okay.
will not.
Please give a roll call vote.
I would like an exact definition of what under protest will mean.
What are you going to do with it?
The motion that is on the floor doesn't use the word protest. It says that Montara and Granada must stipulate that the city is going to, well, I take it back. It does say under protest, but the protest has to do with whether or not the court decision is in favor of the city having to pay for IPS repair. If the city doesn't have to pay and it's under litigation, then the stipulation would be that the city would get the money back if the current verdict is maintained, then the city will have paid its share of the IPS repairs.
Just say our attorney has instructed us that we feel that the contributing to the repair is an obligation of the ERF settlement, which we all voted yes on and agreed to, and therefore it's moot to stipulate. We're not going to stipulate.
As has our attorney.
Yeah.
And I am not going to vote to relieve Half Moon Bay of its obligations for the contract it signed with ERF. So roll call vote, please.
Director Clark,
No,
Director Penrose,
Yes.
Director Dye,
No.
Director Radback,
Yes.
Director Decker,
No,
Chair Slater Carter.
No. It's a tie vote. Do we have, I would like to make another motion, and that is that we authorize the general manager to send the budget to the 3-member agencies, and each agency can vote for itself, realizing that this is also voting on our, Jeremy, maybe you can help me with it.
Yeah, I would just say it's a vote, a motion to approve, to send the general budget to the member agencies for approval.
Okay, so spoken. We have a second.
yes,
Thank you, Peter. Motion by Catherine, second by Peter. Roll call vote, please.
Director Clark,
aye,
Director Penrose,
No.
Director Dye,
No.
Director Radback,
No.
Director Decker,
yes,
Chair Slater Carter.
I'm going to vote yes, and I'm going to say that for ERF and the regulators who are watching this, Montera is voting to uphold our contractual obligations to ERF through SAM. Montera is voting to help repair the environmental damage that was done in a long delayed and deferred project. And as such, Montera will strongly consider finding out what the future costs of this project are. And if there are additional costs caused by the delay, Montera will not participate in them. Thank you. Do we have any other motions? Hearing none, moving on to the general
I
manager.
would like to comment on this item. Can I make a comment on this?
Oh, please.
And I also do after he's done.
Thank you.
Please keep in mind that it is important that we take this budget to the member agencies, because this is a process where we first take it to the member agencies, they take it to their board or the council, gets approved or commented, and then we bring it back to the SAM, for adopting. And last year, the same process was taken on March 28th. So we're already 1 month late. And we have only 2 months before we can adopt the budget. We have May and June. So I would like to emphasize that I don't want to end up in a situation where SAM does not have the operations budget approved, which happened a couple of years back, as all of you know, probably 2016. And we had multiple problems. As it is, we are having cash flow issues with the storm-related winter storm damage taking place, where we've coughed up more than $1 million. we are not in a comfortable position if the budget does not get approved as of July 1. I just wanted the board to note it and be aware that this could lead to certain repercussions, which would not be good for SAM. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I would like to hear before we move on, Montero, we've made our statement. I'd like to hear what those who voted against this motion would like to see done so that we can pass the budget in a timely fashion and move it on to the general agencies.
I would like to see us pass it with the stipulation that Half Moon Bay will pay accept the budget or accept sending the budget to our member agencies with the stipulation that we do it under protest.
So Half Moon Bay is holding the budget hostage.
No. Half Moon Bay had a motion which you denied.
Yes,
And
because
so
on our,
I'm still speaking.
thank you. Always.
When you denied that, you put yourself in a position where you could not pass the budget. We were very happy to pass the budget back to the member agencies. We would love to help Keisha out and get this budget passed. It's nothing we like more. We don't like holding things up. But you're being unreasonable and you're flagrantly in violation of the letter of the law as we see it. And so we had to make that motion, and I'm sorry that you are unable to get yourself around that. You just can't do it. So you had to vote no. So I'm sorry.
Harvey, do you have anything to add?
I basically agree with what the mayor said. We don't want to hold up the budget. We want to make sure that the ERF lawsuit doesn't negatively affect us, but we're still waiting to hear the final verdict on the lawsuit on whether or not Half Moon Bay has to pay for IPS repairs. If it turns out that the verdict is that we do have to pay, then we will have paid. If it turns out that we are not responsible, then we will expect the money that we have had spent will be refunded. It's fairly simple. We're not in favor of holding up the capital budget. It's important to us for the sake of public safety that we get it done. But we want to make sure that we obey the law and that we listen to whatever the final verdict of the lawsuit is and respect that. And that's why we're asking for this stipulation.
Thank you. Let's get Barbara to say what she also voted no, so I'd like to hear what she would like to see so she could help move the budget forward.
I would like to see a reasonable estimate of the costs of doing the three things it looks like we need to do in the year ahead, which is design, environmental work, and permitting, and potentially creating a bid. I'd like to see the total of that. And I would also like to have a discussion, we have to resolve it, but how we handle excess costs from last year that have not been paid for. And they just can't be covered by cash flow. That we have to have a way of making sure that the funding that we pay gets spent for what we want. And that's my concern. And I would like to do a fairly quick budget workshop on that. That's something that's my personal issue, and I'd like to try to resolve that quickly. But the first one is also an issue that we discussed today with our attorney and our general manager, that we would like a solid estimate, very generous estimate, but an estimate of what the actual cost would be. And again, I don't see why this is what we're gonna be doing in the year ahead. We'd have to park a couple $1 million here just in case.
Thank you, Peter. And Keisha after Peter.
He didn't vote no.
No, but he had a response.
No, I just wanted to say that I'd like to address the concern of Parkland Way, but I'm afraid that we can't do that in open session because it's a legal matter. I have something to add to the legal matter that should not be an open session, it should be in closed session.
Thank you. And I will simply say that once again, Half Moon Bay is holding Sam hostage and is holding the member agencies hostage and is blaming the member agencies for their own lack of confidence in their own lawsuit. And I will say that it's kind of like blaming the victim. We have already said, you don't need our permission. So I, at some point, am asking, and I'm asking the press to ask the question, why do they need our permission to vote under protest? What kind of legal consequence is there if we vote under protest? Particularly to a project that they agreed to through SAM for a federal lawsuit. Keisha.
I fail to understand why a breakup is required at this stage, because this is a not to exceed $3.5 million, and the board approved the contract to SRT consultants just in the last meeting and asked the consultant to come up with several alternates. So without knowing which alternate we are going to follow, I fail to understand how we can get an accurate design cost, environmental cost, and all those things. That's why we have a not to exceed. And we all know that once we do the pre-design, design, and the environmental, we need to start the construction. So if there's balance money left, we have the time, then we're going to use that for construction. It's not like SAM is taking $3.5 million and just for environmental and design, say for example, we incur an expense of $2 million, then the $1 million, we don't know what to do with it. Of course we know, we're going to start construction. Construction is imminent, it is required as per the ruling that we've got. So it is a not to exceed $3.5 million, and the breakup cannot be given until the consultant finishes the study, what they've been asked to do. And they have to come up with several alternates, and then the board has to approve that. So.
And how long will that take in your?
They've already started the work, and they are hopeful of bringing it back to the board in the month of July or August. We are working with them. They've already done a lot of work. They've begun drafting a report on alternative analysis. They've had the environmental team under contract. In the last meeting, Half Moon, they suggested that we go ahead with the biologist. The biologist has also been hired. They've started doing the desktop review. And they've done a site visit, and all these things have been going on.
But in the last meeting, we didn't authorize the environmental study, even though many of us were in support of it.
We authorized the biologist as long as it was told that it is within the authorization of the general manager.
Yeah.
So that if
So when you want to do something, you just spend the money. I think it's a good idea. Anyway, never mind.
Okay. Moving right along then. Thank you, everyone. To the general manager's report.
I thought Jeremy had a comment to make.
Oh, Jeremy, did you have a comment? I missed your hand.
I just encourage all the board members to let's not get this too far down the road without getting it resolved. I know people are kind of posturing, but let's not push it too far. Eventually, we got to get this budget approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Manager's report.
We have the packet with you, but in addition to the packet, I just wanted to inform the board as well as the public that we had submitted an application for the grant through FEMA. That was actually the main applicant was Montara Water and Sanitary District, because we as a JPA are not allowed to submit the application directly. So we submitted it to Montara, and we had some very good discussions with FEMA. There was a group of about 7 people, 4 of them were present in-house and 3 were on Zoom. We had a great meeting last week. They were very much impressed with the preparedness that we had. We had all the invoices together, and primarily the entire winter storm damages that took place between December 27th to January 31st will be valued at and will be looked at for the grant funding. And they are categorizing it into several stages, into literally 7 stages, starting with debris removal, emergency protective measures, roads and bridges, if any, water control facilities, buildings and equipment, utilities, parks, recreation, and others. So we had a whole lot of invoices totaling to about $1.1 million. And we went through each one of them, and FEMA was able to help us and categorize as to which category each one falls into. And the way they've indicated to us is that whatever work has been completed on the winter storm damages before February 25th of 2023, we will be reimbursed 100% of it. And if anything has been done after February 25th, 2023, FEMA is going to pay only 75% of it, and about 18.75% will be paid by Cal OES. So that's an indication given, and it is very encouraging. And what they've indicated is we've got time until the sooner we assimilate everything and give them information, it will be good for us. But they said that after receipt of all documentation, it will be 60 to 90 days when they will be able to give us the funds. So that's pretty good, and that's pretty quick, knowing that there are several agencies who have applied for FEMA, and it's just about a month since we applied, and the whole team was here in person last week.
Excellent.
So that's a very good sign.
Congratulations.
Excellent work. Thank you, Keisha. That's great.
But they
Yeah.
did say quite clearly, time is of the essence. We need to get this in with detail, with receipts, with proof that whatever we're putting it in, we have to show that what we're replacing the pipe with. And part of this was for the Montera, for the Sam Force Main in Montera. And so we're looking at possibly getting a rebate on some of this money that we've already spent, right? But again, if we have our staff tied up trying to horse around with a budget that we can't agree to, because Half Moon Bay wants Montera and Granada to agree to something that's totally out of order and irrational, then our staff is going to lose time and we're going to lose money on the, possibly lose money on the FEMA. I think we need to think about all of these things.
Yeah, and I must say, we were able to capture costs as much as cleaning costs and all that, and down to the penny, we were able to capture everything. And all times due to the Tyler software that we've got, that helped a lot. And of course, the wonderful team of finance officer and accounting technician, they assembled everything together and made it so easy that FEMA was really impressed. They said, I've never seen such an agency which has put together everything and been able to capture these costs to such detail.
And I will say, I heard them say that. I'm a witness.
Good for you. That's great.
So we have a great team in the finance section.
Excellent.
Okay. Attorney's report?
Wait, I have one.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to say I went through the minister's report, and boy, your staff works really hard, does a lot of good things. So that was really through. I had one question, which it sounds like the thing about how the creek did come up pretty high, Tim.
Yeah.
How it says it comes up below the plastic. How close was it to overflow coming over the berm?
Maybe 4 feet.
Oh, well, that's a lot.
Huh?
That's a lot. So
I've never seen, all the time I've been here, twice within 6 weeks. Never.
yeah.
Never. I was talking to Richard the other day, who back when the treatment plant, they did the wetlands mitigation, I think with Taffin Bay over here, right? And he's been there since the mid-90s doing the wetlands mitigation. He said the same thing. He said he has never seen that type of elevation in the mitigation area where he's at. In all the years he's been here.
Well, I'm a little confused because I saw the water flowing over the top of the existing berm and we were making a new berm.
No, this is the second time.
This is a second time because we placed a new berm. We brought in some dirt after it overflowed and the creek receded. We brought in more base and we built it up, and then we put plastic over the top of it to help retain it. And the water level got up to the bottom of the plastic, which is down a little bit, but still, it's, I mean, it's not.
So it
It's
was
4 feet below the top.
It was 4 feet from
Yeah.
below the top of the new berm, but it would have been flowing over the old berm.
I don't think it would have been overflowing. We didn't build it up that much.
No, over
But-
the old berm.
No, it still would have been, but it was still high. It was still really high.
Yeah.
That's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
a lot
real-
higher
Still
than
a real danger.
it's
Yeah.
still a real danger.
There's a lot of money, there's a lot of water still in that money. There's no, we're talking about money doing, there's a lot of water still in that creek.
Aaron, have a comment? Yeah.
So if you look at the Geological Society, they have a hydrology meter for the actual river itself, the creek. And it shows that normal flow is about 2.5 feet. And when it came over the berm on the 31st of December, it was at 14.68 feet. So that's a huge difference. What Tim is referring to when it got down to the bottom is about 10.5 feet.
Okay.
So it was about 4 feet, but at the same time, in a fast river, that can change like that. And so, yes, it didn't go over the berm, but it's still for an operator, you sit there and your heart starts pumping. Because you do not want to see that happen again.
No.
And so, I mean, I know it is 4 feet, but during a river surge, whether it's SFPUC or the range or whatever it is, that can change very quickly. So yes, it didn't go over the second time, that's wonderful, but it's still not good.
Close.
And it's just impressive how hard everybody works in their office reports.
Okay, attorney's report.
Yes, we do have a closed session we need to address, but I have nothing further to report at this time.
Thank you. Director's reports.
I think PFAs or PFAS are sure in the news these days. So,
But I will say I was listening to Diane Pappen speak, and one of her pieces of legislation was not to allow tampons to have PFAS in there. And so that's new legislation that is in the works and probably will be signed, but I was shocked to hear that these are in some of our most intimate things, health products. Topics.
one more thing, sorry.
Yes.
I did go up to Arcata and do a visit to the sewer treatment plant there. I was able to get into a lot of it because they're doing big construction. But that in the 90s, they got their money to do a big marsh-based project. It's really interesting to see how they do the treatment and use the natural basins to treat it. They're also converting their chlorine to UV sterilization of the water. So it was nice, interesting to see all that. Yes, we had the room and the capability and the millions of dollars it would take to do that. And the energy. Got a lot else going on.
Okay, anybody else? Seeing none, topics for future board consideration. There is an attachment. Would anybody like to add anything to it? Seeing none, we will convene in closed session. If we take any action, we will report out after we get out of closed session. So let's take 5 minutes to get the digital stuff all organized, and so it's 8:24 right now. We'll come back at 8:30.
Last time we did it.